Log it down, get into the chopper. We are live. Steve, what's going on, brother? I missed you last week.
Yeah, I missed you too, Chase. Glad to see you here.
I'm sure you did.
Today, we have a very special live feed. We've got MD helicopters here. We've got all the guys. We've got Mark, Dave, and Steve. Also, Justin. So if we want to fly over here, we can check them out.
Steve, with all the puns already, fly over here. Chase, you knew how to do that?
You know,
How did you learn that? You can't. When I say look this way, mostly, you're going to ignore it when I say that. He says fly, and you knew exactly what to do. What happened on your week off? Did you learn all this?
You know, I've been doing a lot of studying and listening. It's this thing where you kind of just engage with what people are saying, and you comprehend, and you try to go off of what they tell you.
Well, that sounds amazing. I'm glad you read it somewhere, because you certainly didn't learn it. I guarantee it. But yes. I'm back. Sorry, I was gone for a week, and but it was a ton of fun, and I'd do it again. But I'm here today because we have some very special guests from MD Helicopters. Steve has already done our introductions, but I would like to have them do their own introduction for you guys so that you understand exactly who we're talking to. So first, Steve, who are you, and what do you do at MD?
My name is Steve Lapping. I'm a retired Army helicopter pilot, so I didn't go too far from what I knew. After the military service, I've been with MD for 5 years, since 2016, and I specialize in military sales, mostly to foreign militaries.
So Dave, I don't think there's any guesswork as to what you do at MD, guessing by what you're wearing today.
Exactly. Yeah, Dave Salem, lead pilot for commercial operations and flight instructor, test pilot for the production side, and we do a lot of completion for the aircraft that are being delivered.
So test flights.
Yes.
Dave, do you have a nickname like everybody does in all military flight movies?
Chopper
Goose?
Dave. Chopper Dave.
Chopper Dave.
Yeah. When I was a police officer, I was a motorcycle officer. My first motorcycle was a Harley. So my neighbor called me Chopper Dave.
And that carried.
And then I got into the air unit, and it carried on. So I'm Chopper Dave.
Awesome.
So
the rest of this video is going to be Chopper Dave.
Do you know what they call police helicopters?
yes.
Helicopters.
Oh, I thought it was ghetto bird. I thought it was ghetto. That's what we always been called, is ghetto bird.
Yeah.
So,
Mark, who are you and what do you do?
So Mark Broder, I work with Steve in the Sales Business Development Department. Like Steve, I'm also a retired Army helicopter pilot, and been with MD now probably 6-7 months, new to the team.
What did you fly in the military when you were doing it?
So as you can tell by the gray hair, most of the stuff I flew is sitting out of front in museums on big blocks, VFWs or whatnot. So started out with Huey's Cobras and 58s. After the wall came down, went to Poland, learned to fly Mi-17 Russian helicopter, and finished up with Blackhawks.
Awesome, awesome. What was the majority of your experience, and which helicopters were you flying in the military, Steve?
For me, I started off in the Bell, the 206, the OH-58, and flew the MD product for about 16 years, and Blackhawks as well, so for a total of 30.
And Dave, mostly police work for the majority of your hours?
mostly police work, yes.
And which helicopters?
A MD-500E and a MD-500F.
Oh, so overly qualified for everything you're doing today.
I don't know.
Tons of hours. Well, I'll tell you, I have a little bit of a story, and that is I got a tour of the MD factory not too long ago, and Dave was nice enough to fly us around. He let me fly a little bit too, and but as soon as he took control and showed me exactly what the helicopters can do, I was blown away. And one of the things that you did was grabbed a helicopter and stuck it to the side of a mountain and pretty much hands off and let that thing just sit there on the skids. You could walk in and out of it if it was, say, like a mountain rescue. It was kind of really, really cool.
Yeah, we call that a tow-in. And basically you're just pushing the helicopter into the mountain, and just like you said, you're just holding it there, letting the rescuers out or the victims in.
Very, very cool. That was really impressive. So what do helicopters have to do with the feed that we normally throw around here in UTVs? Well, there's a lot of similarities and related products and technologies. In UTVs, you'll find a lot of the technology that is coming out today is borrowed from somewhere else, typically aerospace, aviation-based, maybe even other forms of racing. And in addition to that, if you go to any of the off-road races and start looking at trophy truck teams, you're going to find they've all got a helicopter following them around for video. So when it comes to off-road racing, UTVs in general, a lot of things are borrowed, and the more of an intimate relationship that we can have with people in the industry like you guys, then we get to just borrow some of the scraps you get to throw away and throw that at some of the products that we have on our UTVs and look like rock stars because it's engineered properly, or maybe the materials that we're using is coming from aerospace. So that's one of the reasons why everybody's here to kind of chat about things. If you guys have good questions, then make sure they're good. We'll bring them up too. But first, when it comes to MD helicopters, I'll let you guys answer whoever's best at it. Maybe give us a little bit of history of where MD started, how long ago that was, and really what is the space for your business now?
Sure, I can take that. So I'm 55, so I remember when the company started, because it was about that time ago. So in 1963, they formally built their first aircraft, which was the 086, and that's kind of the legacy of the MD 530 series. But even before that, Howard Hughes started the company with Hughes Tool, then it went to aircraft, to helicopters, and several versions of the name. And he took it for quite some time, did very well with it. It's probably one of the longest made aircraft, and when Justin was talking about technologies and advancements, some of the things are still made the same way they were 50 years ago because the design was so good. Don't change something that's not broke. And it has changed ownership several times. It went from Hughes to McDonnell Douglas. McDonnell Douglas merged with Boeing, became the Boeing company, and for a short time it went to a Dutch company, and finally to where it's at now, which was 2005. The company was sold, and we've been carrying on for going on 16 years now. And we've been in Mesa, Arizona. Originally came from Culver City, California, and we've been doing real well here in Mesa, Arizona. It's ask Dave, out of 365 days, we can probably fly 363. So really love the environment out here.
When it comes to like the business and the history that you just covered, how many employees do you guys have right now, and how many helicopters do you think that you guys build a year, for say?
So right now, because part of my job in sales, is to keep in with HR, we're about 400 employees, but we've surged up to 630 at times, depending on contracts. So our focus has shifted a little bit from probably about 70% military, 30% commercial, to more about 60-40, and we're trying to get an even split. So we've definitely opened back up the commercial market on that. And so we've probably an average is 40 aircraft a year, but we have sold in excess of 60 a year with a large scale military contract.
And of those, say, 60 a year on a good year with military contracts, would most of those be military, and which model would it be?
Sure. Yeah, military, when we get a fleet order, which we would consider 6 or more, and then that was probably, I think we had an order for 30 at one time. So, business is good when you get 30 on there, but we try to focus as well on the same customer who's buying one. And, when you're doing 30, it's kind of easy because they're, I don't want to say cookie cutters, but they're all made exactly the same. And so then when we go back, we make the one commercial model, it takes a little bit more effort because it's a little bit more customized. So it could take just as long.
And it's good to get the military platforms.
Yes.
They're usually large orders, solid customer, international. But just because based on Dave's experience with the Mesa PD, we make a great platform for the commercial market, whether it's law enforcement or utility construction, power line work, and that type of thing. So we're kind of, Steve's kind of heading up the military side of the house, but we're trying to expand our commercial sales into the commercial utility and law enforcement marketplace.
You mentioned one thing, and that was power line work. And one of the coolest videos I've ever seen and continue to see is what people use a 500 or a 530 for. And hanging a couple of power line guys off the skids and doing maintenance work on hot power lines and being able to hover right next to it. So why is that the platform of choice when it comes to stable, steady, really high dangerous kind of work?
Several things. One is the aircraft is a very simple aircraft. We don't have hydraulics, so it's something you don't have to worry about if you're next to a very high voltage power line, having a hydraulic failure. It's got a small rotor disc, so again, you can get in very tight areas. And then also, you have great visibility with the skids. You can get that skid right up next to the live power line, and you get, again, great visibility, so a great, simple platform.
Yeah, don't know what they pay those guys, but it's clearly not enough. So.
Yeah, I would 100%. Watching these guys put a ground rod on there, and it's it's a lightning bolt. Okay, and then they can work on it. That's just insane. Steve, you had something?
Yeah, we got a couple questions on here for the guys here. A couple people want to know, how much does it cost for someone to get their personal or commercial license? And do you guys do training for people to do that?
Good question, Steve.
I'll take that one. We do not do any training for furtherance of a rating. Everybody that comes into our facility has some type of license. But if you were to go out and get a license, it's anywhere from $10,000 to $100,000 depending on what type of license you're wanting. So, but there's, again, a simple private license, probably around $10,000. As you go up and get your instrument rating, your commercial rating, your instructor rating, you're probably getting close to $100,000.
Now, let's say somebody came in to your facility, they just bought one. Maybe they didn't buy it off of your production line, but they bought one, and they want training from you guys on your helicopter. Then what can they expect in time and money for that?
We train probably 200 to 220 civilian operators or pilots every year, and that's not including the military side. Anywhere from, you can come in and just request an hour of flight time, and we're just going to go out and do emergency procedures, or you can do a transition course. So if you were to buy a helicopter, we would like to transition you into that aircraft. It's basically 1 week. It's about 25 hours of ground school and 5 hours of flight time. And after that 5 hours, I guarantee you'll feel very comfortable and be able to handle any emergency that comes.
And that's like $10, right?
It's about $10. 11 if you supplied lunch for you.
And a six-pack, yeah.
And what Dave does, Dave and the other instructors, is they do full touchdown emergency procedure training. So a lot of the places you're going to go out and you're going to simulate an engine failure with an auto rotation with a power recovery and then not land all the way to the ground. With Dave and the crew, you're going to go out there and every maneuver is going to be to the ground.
To the ground, full.
And it's hard to get that training elsewhere, and these guys do it every day.
As we say, we don't teach you to pass a check ride. We teach you to save your life. If something happens, we want you to be able to walk away from the aircraft.
So
Ty Wiley would like to just say that Mark is the man. As well as we got...
Did I take it you know Ty?
My future son-in-law.
Oh, watching the feed. There you go.
Man.
Brownie points, doing good. As well as we got our guy, Dom Galindo, in the building. He would like to say hello, friends.
That's Dom, who flew with us on our tour.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And Dom flies EMS for a living and then trains guys like me on the side. But
Before I let you go, Rich Fortin would like to say, do you guys plan on making any titanium UTV parts? And he would like to advise, please don't. He's already broke.
supply the fix to his, the drug to his fix, right? But you were talking about training, and you were talking about training on maybe a delivery or training for militaries. So, one of the questions I've always wanted to ask you guys is, so you get the military order, it's a fleet at 6 or more, you're delivering 10 of these things to, I don't know, Indonesia. Now, what's the process in that? Do they come here, get training? Do you deliver there? Is there a multi-level to that?
So let me just take a second on training in general, and then you guys can kick in with the particulars of Justin's question. Training, and Steve kind of alluded to it with the auto rotations, and it's something since I've been here. Our training, guys like Dave, the rest of the pilots, the process, how we conduct the training, it's the best I think I've seen since my Army days, right? I mean, what we do from a training perspective, and when Dave says we don't train past check ride, we train to save your life, he is not kidding. And we get accolades all day long from guys who leave feeling that they could go out and fly and know that when something happens with the aircraft, they're not 10 seconds behind the aircraft. So We really want to highlight our training. We got an article coming up in a trade publication on training, and we have current customers in Malaysia. We just finished training with Lebanon, and I'll let you guys take over on the particulars.
So how about Malaysia or Lebanon, since that was just current? You know,
Sure.
what's the process in handing them a helicopter that they can fly?
Well, and I'll go back even one further because it's a completed delivery. It was with the Kenyan Army. And the Kenyan Army has had our aircraft starting with the 500D series for 25 years. So all of those guys had time in the aircraft. They were experienced pilots. And the first thing they said when they came here and started flying with ours is, wow, there's a lot that I didn't know about the aircraft or some of its capabilities. And so they always learned something. And so the Kenyans went through a basic aircraft qualification because it was an upgrade, glass cockpit, different weapon systems, and then we took them out and we qualified them in night vision goggles, and they had never flown with night vision goggles. So as an OEM, we're taking a military customer from the basic qualification to military tactics, techniques, and procedures is what we call it, TTP, night vision goggles, and then we culminated with NVG live fire, shooting the guns, shooting the rockets, and then we delivered the aircraft. We stayed there for an additional 60 days and trained them at their ranges. And by the way, there were, you know, in Africa, yeah, so we had one of the aircraft receive some battle damage from hyenas chewing on the position light covers. So the guys knew when they went out at night, you know, don't go out
Don't
there
go
without.
far.
Yeah, don't go far.
But hyenas.
yeah.
I thought we had it bad with the pack rats.
So that's just one of the examples, you know, from start to finish. That's quite the task for our training academy.
So how does like, another country contact you guys, order aircraft, and get delivery of aircraft? That seems like a monumental thing to me. Be on the outside wondering how that works, because you know, different laws, different lawyers, they might make up their own rules. You know, you're worried about that when it comes time for being done. You know, how does that work?
Sure. I'll take that one. Just most people think that I probably just sit at my desk and answer the phone, you know, and it's easy and it comes in. But we actually sell two different ways. We sell a commercial sale, which is directly from the OEM to the end user, or we sell through what's called a foreign military sale, and that's through the U.S. government. So the U.S. government has programs and procedures where we have our allied partners, our nations that are working through the U.S. embassies in those respective countries. And they'll work with them, and then they'll come to us, and Afghanistan as an example. So we've sold over 48 aircraft to the Afghanistan Air Force, and basically the U.S. government is our customer. And they can be funded several different ways. Either the end user will make that purchase and we'll work out payment terms with them, or we also have something that's called foreign military funding. And when it's in the best interest of the United States government to provide funding for some of our allies, then the government would pay that, and usually everything is paid in full before they roll out the fence.
And then maybe the government works out the payment terms, or
Exactly.
if there are any,
Exactly.
or if it's part of an aid
U.S.
package.
government has a much bigger arm to go out and get that payment than, you know, MD
Right.
helicopters would be able to.
But the government plays a big piece, right? Because they're not going to let you sell armed aircraft to any country, and even if it's not, it's a commercial sale. It goes through Department of State or Department of Commerce. So, like Steve says, he just doesn't sit at his desk and answer the phone. He's dealing with all those entities to make sure we get the export license to get the aircraft to where
Export licenses, so that would mean that you've got a list of countries. Obviously, North Korea is not going to be ordering any helicopters anytime soon.
Yeah, probably
or
not.
maybe they would try and you can't do it, but there's a list of sell and not sell.
Sure.
Okay. What have you ever gotten through the process halfway through it, and then all of a sudden that country's put on the don't sell list?
Well, so it could always come down to that, you know, U.S. policies change, and so we have something that's called a marketing license, meaning we can go out there and we can sell to the end user, and then we have to get a sales license. And so what changes between the marketing and the sales sometimes, you know, just depends on U.S. policy. But usually the government's pretty good keeping us informed of, you know, how the end result is going to go.
And it change on a dime based on relations and things going on in the world.
Gotcha. Steve, you got a question with that?
Yeah, so, well, not along with that, but just a question. So when someone does purchase a helicopter with you guys, from like start to finish, what is the build time? What does that take in time reference?
So, I'll take it. So, it's one of our discriminators actually, is we're able to turn on an aircraft in a pretty short period period of time compared to our competitors. So we like to say 12 months, but 8 to 12 months is generally what we could do from first rivet to off the test flight line.
That should answer your question, triple digit sketch. Much faster than the speed UTV.
That's a running joke you guys may not know about, but we'll fill you in on that one a little bit
You
later.
guys kept talking too about fleet of helicopters. Do you know what they call a fleet of helicopters?
I do not.
Helicopters.
Okay, all right.
Bad joke number 2.
Yeah, exactly. Very, very, very bad. And he's here all day. so-
Dave saw me counting on my fingers. That's 2, Steve.
So
Does the bonus get based on?
it's him. You can't turn him off. He's tried.
You know what amazes me, Justin, though, is the helicopter is made by hand. Every rivet is hand bucked by our mechanics or our sheet metal guys, and it is made by hand from the very first rivet on the keel beam till it's rolling out the door where we start our test flights. And it amazes me how many man hours go into it, but the passion these guys and gals that are doing it, they're incredible people that we get to work with.
Well, and you kind of brought up a subject along those lines too, that the MD is specifically the 500 series is kind of has a cult following from Vietnam era to Magnum PI making that shape more famous, I think, and then into the more modern versions like you guys had landed in the parking lot today, which we'll go take a look at when we're done. But that cult following extends from the handmade nature and the kind of family atmosphere that you guys have with a lot of people who have worked there for many, many, many years. It's not a revolving door, and of highly skilled people. Plus, that model is considered to be the Ferrari of the helicopter world. So what makes it the Ferrari of the helicopter world, really? If for someone who doesn't fly, explain that.
I think you're going to have half the audience scratching their head on the Magnum PI thing. But
That's us. Yeah, we're old enough to know.
What makes it the Ferrari is handling capability and its speed. The V&E, which is the never exceed speed, is 152 knots, which is over 180 miles an hour. There's not too many helicopters out there that will travel that fast, but the handling qualities, the way it's built and the way the rotor system is, it's a very, very nimble aircraft. And again, that's why they call it the Ferrari of the sky, because it will handle like a Ferrari on rails.
Mark, what's your favorite helicopter that you guys make?
that's kind of a trick question, right? Just like I asked you
Okay, I'll give you
earlier.
2.
So just like I asked you, what's the best UTV? It's kind of like it depends. Today's the first day I flew out with Dave that I've flown the MD helicopter since I've been here at MD. But going back to my military days, the Cobra, the attack helicopter, it was sporty, it was fun to fly, you could shoot rockets, and it was kind of sexy. And really the Blackhawk, it's just a nice machine. So.
And I think, Dave, we probably know the answer to that question for you, since you've been in 500 series for almost everything you've flown.
I've flown this and other manufacturers, but I would have to say the 530 that we have outside, that's my favorite. I mean, it's just the way it flies, the way it handles, the speed.
It's also got the most horsepower in that platform, right? 600 and change?
It's 650, derated down to 450.
So that was actually another question that I should have probably led with. What's the horsepower ratings in these things? Because that's what all of our UTV guys are buying them at 180 and souping them up to 250 or 300. And I think the world expects these things to have thousands of horsepower in them to be able to do what they do, but they really don't. So what's the range in power on, say, the more popular helicopters that people know? Not the military twin engine stuff that's 3,000 horsepower, but like the one outside.
The one outside, top horsepower, because it is derated down, is about 450 horsepower. The smallest one we make is about 425 horsepower, and that's coming out of an engine that weighs about 180 pounds. So a lot of horsepower out of a small package.
Might want to talk about why it's derated.
We derated down because of the limitations with the rotor system, the transmission, the drive system. Everything that spins has a torque limit on it. So we have to take that horsepower and derate it down so we don't cause damage.
Because you can make more power and load it harder than the components can hold, and you don't want to put 1,000 horsepower into one of these when the transmission and the rotor system is only going to be good to a 600 foot-pound torque rating or whatever it might be.
Exactly.
Safety.
With helicopters, it's not necessarily, you want to go faster or you want to have more horsepower. So the smaller engine, the C-20B, private owners like that because it has better fuel consumption and they can extend their range, they can extend their endurance, and their usable load is a little better. So really it just depends what your mission is. If there's no need to have the 650 horsepower engine, it's probably better to go with something a little less, just different needs, different missions.
Steve, what's your favorite?
I agree with Dave. The 530 is, it's so multi-purpose that it can do everything on there. And living in Arizona with the 500E with a smaller engine, you can temp out, meaning that you'll reach a limitation with the temperature because it's so hot here. So the 530F definitely helps with that and gives you some more power.
Also doesn't have the temp issues when it's hot outside as the other does, right?
Right.
Right. Steve, what do you got?
We got a couple questions. One was, where's Matt? And I say it's kind of hard to miss him. He is right here. And for two, we've got from Rusty Demon. He said, this is so cool. Thank you, MD and ST, for doing an interview. Mad respect. But people want to know, how many different types of helicopters do you guys offer? Different models.
Good question.
I guess model. Good question.
We build a 500E, which is exact same fuselage as that, just a smaller engine and smaller rotor. We build a 520N, which is a NOTAR, so there's no tail rotor on it. Same engine, same fuselage. We build a 530F, which is that aircraft that we have outside. We build a 600N, which is a stretched version. Basically, we put a 30-inch plug in there so we can carry 3 more passengers. And we build a 902, which is a twin engine that has the capability of hauling 7 passengers and a pilot. And then we also have the military versions, Cayuse Warrior and a 530G, which are 2 different types of gunships.
So minimum 10, and then different versions of a lot of within that as well, right? What do you got, Matt?
Follow-up question, you were talking about how long it takes to produce it. When it's finished, you mentioned test flight. Do you test flight every single helicopter? And if so, how many hours do you guys fly?
It typically takes us anywhere from a week to 2 weeks to test fly an aircraft, from the very first time we start the aircraft up to the very first hover, to going out and flying it at the V&E speeds with max gross weight. While we're flying it, we're going through a production test flight procedure that the engineers have developed, and we're going through and verifying that all the systems are operating. Plus, we're tracking and balancing the rotor system just like you do a tire of a car. That rotor system is spinning at 400 and some RPM, so we have to balance it to make sure it's a smooth ride. Plus it's a wing, so we have to make sure that when it's tracked, all the wings are flying straight. So it typically takes anywhere from a week to 2 weeks. And then we have the authority from the FAA to actually what we call buy the aircraft. We sign off on it, and then it gets a certification stating it's now an airworthy aircraft. The FAA can't go to every manufacturer and put a certificate on aircraft, so they designate certain pilots within the OEMs.
To do it yourself, and the certifications for that are probably massive.
I'm sure everyone at home's got a ceiling fan that's got a blade that's not flying. It's driving them crazy from a vibration.
Imagine that times 1,000.
Yeah. Same principle. Yeah.
And not only with that, so we do FAA certifications on our commercial aircraft, but we also do something that's called the GFRC through the military. And so we're required to meet the U.S. military standards, so it gets a airworthiness release at the end. So we've got 2 production lines. One is for our FAA commercial, and the other is for the military. And that's something that we just gained certification on within the last 12 months. So we're pretty proud of that.
I got a rapid fire simple questions for you guys, so don't take very long to think about it. But how many rivets are in a 500?
A lot.
A lot.
One for every hole. That's what I say. Yeah.
Hopefully every hole is filled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's actually 2 holes on the side that look like rivet holes. We call those weep holes. So it's
On purpose. There's 2 missing.
On purpose, but it looks like rivet holes.
How many feet or miles of wire are in one?
Oh my gosh.
I'm going to take on Dave and say shitload.
Yeah.
A shitload?
One up a lot.
So Tony does all our wiring on the race cars, and he wanted us to find out the answer that is super important to him. Why is all the wiring white?
I think so they can label it and identify it.
Yep.
Because we have a machine that the wire goes through that identifies it.
What it is.
Exactly, and where it goes.
I see.
So I think I'm just a pilot, but I think it's for ease of identifying and labeling it.
I'll tell you one thing that I heard, and I don't know if it's true or not. It's because if you're in the military working on aircraft, what if you're colorblind and they tell you that the orange wire with the red stripe on it is for something important?
Giving the military way too much credit on that.
How many hours does it take to build one? I know you said a year, but that's not hours. You could put 300 people on it, you could put 20 people on it.
So, wish we said we could.
And how about low and high? I mean, you have so many models, I get the hours are different. But
So for your typical 530F sitting out there, circa 10 to 12,000 hours.
10 to 12,000 hours? Wow. And Steve's laughing because it's a huge number. That's a big number too. I didn't think it was that much.
Yeah.
I was going to say probably 3,000, not 12,000.
Well, and it goes back to, the robotics, and after, on visiting your facilities where, some of the things are done, more modern technology and great. We I don't know if we haven't evolved, or if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And so there's a lot of man hours, a lot of manual labor on that. And some of our guys are more artisans than they are, production builders. So it's a very well built aircraft.
One question that I had, and I'm not sure which of you or all of you can answer it the best, but how do you fly or how do you hover or control a helicopter when you're shooting machine guns or rockets or both? What does it do to it, and what do you have to do to combat that?
Steve,
I can answer that. So I flew this aircraft for 11 years in the Army in an armed version. They called it the AH-6. And we had varying weapons on there, from an M134, which is a 7.62 machine gun, to a 50 caliber machine gun, which is the one that you're talking about, gives you a little kickback, to 2.75 inch folding fin aerial rockets, to Hellfire missiles. And really, it comes to tactics, techniques, and procedures again. And since this aircraft is pretty small, you've got a lot of ordnance on there. The idea is to keep the aircraft moving, very similar to a fixed wing. So as you would see, and Mark was talking earlier about the Cobra or the Apache, may be able to come to a hover and what might be called a battle position, find their targets, and then launch the munitions out. The Little Bird, and so that's the other nickname for this aircraft, the Little Bird, it's more advantageous to maintain airspeed, probably 60 knots or higher. And that gives you better aiming points. It's mainly done with running or diving fire. And as far as kickback, the 50 cal is probably the largest kickback that you're going to get, but that's a weapon system that you're shooting out to 2,000 meters. It's maximum effective range, and so you've got a little bit of time to tune it in. And so if you're shooting from 2,000 meters and you end at 1,000, you're going to be on target by that time.
So don't hover one, because you're not going to be able to hold it still.
It's going to be tough.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough.
That's kind of what I figured would happen. It would be hard to control.
Yeah.
Need what? Something like you had said, really heavy. That's not going to move around very much.
Right. Then you get into, so in a helicopter, it requires more power to hover. And then there's 2 types of hovering. There's in-ground effect, where you're within about a rotor distance, so let's call it 30 feet. And then your out-of-ground effect, where you're outside that 30 feet, which requires even more power. So then you don't get to carry as much ordnance with you. So rather than carrying 200 rounds, now you're only carrying 100 rounds to make up for that power.
So I know you have a lot of engineers and very smart people that are trying to keep this from happening, but Steve has a suggestion that maybe you've never thought of to try and cure this problem.
Oh, yeah, lose weight? Sorry, yeah. you said a lot of weight and doesn't move around much, and all I can think of was Matt. But, yeah.
So your suggestion is, as long as you carry Matt with you, you could hover and fire. Sorry, Matt. That wasn't me. That was all Steve.
Mike Doves, for some reason, I'm ready to go play some Call of Duty.
Oh, yeah. Did Call of Duty have to get licensing from you to use 500s in it? Any of the video games, you guys get contacted by them?
No, but we have spoken with them on getting some more information from us, and that's something that we're actually working forward.
Like
on that.
more accurate cockpits and things like that?
Exactly.
That's really, really cool. Steve and Matt.
A few questions. One from Don Galindo himself. He said, how much hydraulic oil does it have? You're talking,
There's actually,
You said 0.4 milliliters? Is that what he said?
milliliters, is that correct?
So he asked a question you knew the answer to, maybe?
well, there's the only hydraulic system, well, there's two. One is called a one-way lock, and it has a very small amount, maybe 10 tablespoons. And then the rotor brake. And the rotor brake is just like a car brake that clamps onto the rotor system to slow it down. So hydraulic fluid, very little, less than a cup.
And not in a hydraulic system per se that's being pressurized and used for anything. So the design of the helicopter is so well balanced that you can actually fly it by hand without any power assist.
One of the things that we do during our flight test is we're balancing all the systems with springs, levers, and bell cranks. We have no hydraulics to mask anything, so that's how we balance everything. Collective loads and the whole system.
Got it. Steve?
How many hours before an engine overhaul? You gotta be quick in that.
I know they're all different, but
Yeah, I think there's some differences, but I think the first overhaul is around 1,750 hours or so for the turbine section, which is the lower section.
Okay. And then Justin has told me that you have to replace the blades every what was it, 2,500 hours?
well, that's actually on other helicopters. I don't think that's the case on yours, or maybe it is on some of the new ones.
Blades on your guys' helicopters.
It depends on what blade it is, because there's different serial numbers or blades, but
So if we're talking like the one outside, how often would you have to
I think we're
replace
close to about 3,200 hours. Am I right? That's a guess, but I think we're pretty close to about 3,000 to 3,200 hours.
But the chassis itself is no time limit. Is that right?
Right, yeah. So when you brought up it's something called TBO, time between overhauls. And when you look at the MD product, is that we don't have a shelf life. So we've got aircraft that have been flying, when I said that 55 years, they've been flying for that long, and they could fly another 55. Whereas some other aircraft, they have a shelf life and they go through a complete overhaul. And so that's one of the things that makes the MD very unique.
Rich Fortin, what's the ride height on a 500E?
Oh, good question, actually.
The ride height.
So on a UTV, we're looking at 15 inches. And would you know the number, or we want to go and measure it right now?
That one out there's got the Cali lead going on.
We have two different style of landing gear. One is with the standard landing gear, and you're maybe about a foot off the ground from the belly to the ground. And then this is the extended landing gear. So you're probably around 2 feet to maybe 30 inches off the ground.
Gotcha. So way more ground clearance than any of your UTVs. And I guarantee you, through the rough stuff, a helicopter is much smoother no matter what we did to it.
And our limit is 16,000 feet, so we have a little more clearance there.
A little bit more.
We got a lot of people requesting to go see this helicopter, but before we go out there, I got a great question from Mike Doves, believe it or not. We'll start with you, Justin. Best helicopter movie?
Oh man, you didn't even give me any notice.
No.
I don't even get to think about this.
I gave them notice. You're going right off the cusp.
Which one is? I'm going old here because this is
The Vietnam one. With,
so my dad loved it. Was it? I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
Yeah.
Apocalypse Now.
Apocalypse Now.
Okay.
Favorite helicopter movie because that's like the first time I ever got to stare at how a fleet of them coming at you, and what would you do about it? Nothing. Not a damn thing.
Steve, favorite
I
helicopter
agree.
movie?
Break it up to military and commercial. Apocalypse Now for military, and Mission Impossible
There we
because
go.
it had ours in there, but it was some cool stunts that they did in there.
Very cool.
Plus, who doesn't love Tom Cruise, right?
Very true.
We'll edit that out.
Finds his own stuff too.
I think military-wise, Apocalypse Now, again, my favorite just because of the noise and everything. But Blue Thunder. I grew up on Blue Thunder, so...
The series? Yeah. What was the other one? Airhawk or
Airwolf.
Skywalker.
Airwolf. And,
80s sitcoms.
they call out to Alan Perwin, who actually flew Airwolf when he was in his 20s. Recently passed away, but a great movie pilot. So,
Mark, we're not going to let you off the hook.
Apocalypse Now. I can't.
Yep, same.
It's the classic, yeah.
Steve?
Just, I don't have a favorite helicopter movie. I couldn't even think of one.
Tropic Thunder, Steve.
Tropic Thunder is a banger, guys. But Mike Dove said we have Chopper Dave. So is it safe to say that Matt's nickname is Crash?
Yes, yes it is.
Or Rolls.
Brutal.
So before we go walk outside and look at the helicopter you guys flew in on, what are the plans in the immediate and long future for MD as far as you guys see it? And I know that might be a overly broad-reaching question, but besides building more helicopters, do you have something new and cool and secret you can tell us?
Yeah, so as Steve started out, MD Helicopters, iconic brand, started with Howard Hughes. You know, how can you go wrong starting with that? But in the recent, call it 6 to 8 months, has been a change of leadership and culture at the organization, more entrepreneurial. And I think we are going to continue to work to maintain our dominance in the light attack Scout international market and put a lot of emphasis on our commercial market in the law enforcement, utility construction, power line work, that type of thing. It's new, and I guess I'd like to say it's not your father's MD helicopter anymore.
That's a fact.
It's coming around.
I think with that, unless you guys want to have anything else you want to part on, I think we'll go outside and take a look at where you guys flew in.
Awesome.
Maybe open up a door.
Sure.
Because I think a lot of people have questions as to what a glass or any cockpit looks like. There's so many things to look at. You guys want to walk outside? Sure.
Our co-driver Jason said we forgot one movie. A-Team. Mr. T, don't play a fool.
Full Metal Jacket. That's a good one too, Josh. I think you like that one. Take a look outside,
Black
Chase.
Hawk Down, boys.
Excellent one, but I don't think that Black Hawk Down has the cool effect of the rest of the ones we're talking about. Take a look at what these guys came into work in, you guys. So this is an MD 530, right, Dave?
Yes.
And you know what? Casper, the friendly ghost.
That's it.
Someone just asked what's the name of the helicopter, so it's good.
Look at checking
Matt,
this out
can you
the
grab
front of
this
the
tape
helicopter,
measure?
you guys. They got a Casper sticker on the front. Boom.
Chase, why don't you take a look inside there because it gets pretty complicated for the normal guy. Full glass. You did say this one was fairly new, right?
Yeah.
We'll turn it
Yeah,
on
this
here
one's
so you
probably
guys
been
can see
about
the displays.
4 months post-production.
The way
We
this
just
one's
sold it.
configured is we can carry 5 people or 4 people in it. This one's currently configured for 4 people, 2 in the front, 2 in the back.
What's my top speed?
152 knots, which is about 180 miles an hour.
Thank you. So to answer your guys' question from earlier, Chase,
Oh, here we go. Tape measure doesn't lie.
come on over here.
Here we go.
Let's see what we got.
I know we're not at the low spot, but 28 in the front.
I'm guessing 24 in the back. Dave, you nailed it.
They were pretty close.
Dave said 30.
You're now the expert. You're guaranteed.
There's all your white wire.
Robbie Frazier, don't worry, I'm not going to touch anything.
A lot of people would like to know what is this spike for on the front?
That's a wire cutter.
I can actually answer that one. And so that's a wire cutter kit. And if you take a look at this, all hardened material. So if you fly into a power wire, that's going to run up this edge and get sliced off underneath. There's also another one on the top. I'm not joking.
Really?
That is a wire cutter kit.
So
So
we have cattle guards, they have wire cutters.
yeah, I think I was reading stats not too long ago, and I think that the majority of helicopter accidents are weather related, which you can always blame on the pilot for not looking at the weather. Almost.
I think the forms are pre-printed pilot error, and they just fill it out at the accident site.
Every single time it's pilot error. That and of those errors, I think 50% of those are hitting power lines. So that's why a wire cutter kit is pretty important.
Rusty Demon loves the tail number. Didn't even see it yet, 530.
Any doubt what it is? I don't think so.
Well, I have the cockpit on so you can see the synthetic vision. So up here, this is actually the terrain that we're looking at right now. So it's a synthetic digital image based off our GPS position. And so it will change based off of the attitude of the aircraft. And then we have the God's eye view GPS on the other side. Plus, you can see the active aircraft at Deer Valley Airport, and then all the engine parameters. So
Hey.
that is what we consider a glass cockpit.
Hey Chase, check this out. The guys pulled the engine cover off of this thing so you can take a look at what powers this. So this is a capable of 600 and change horsepower.
Yes.
But basically it's 100 pounds of engine, and it starts right about this cover right here and ends right about here. So one of us could pick this up and throw it over our shoulder and go someplace. It's quite incredible, the technology in there.
And really right here, this small section is where all the power is made. We're taking that hot air that's expanding and turning it into rotation, and then that rotation basically rotates the main rotor and the tail rotor.
Very, very, I mean, it's cool. It's also so crazy to think that everything this thing does is developed right in that one
I
spot.
think it's the only helicopter made where the engine mounts at a 47-degree angle.
Why do you choose 47 versus 90 like in a A-Star or another degree?
I think it was more Howard than me, but
So when again, this aircraft was made for military application during the Vietnam War, and so if you work your way back going forward, the safety features, it's low and aft. So we don't like to sell the aircraft saying it crashes well, but it was designed for that. So if the aircraft were to have a hard landing, and a lot of the post-crash fatalities are due to fuel leak and then burning. And so one of the ideas at the time was that the engine would break away, and now you don't have that engine that's producing that heat and the flame source. And then you go all the way to the front, and Dave explained to you the egg shape and the roll bar system that makes it so survivable.
So the design of the chassis in itself is a crash structure and almost a crush-proof structure if you end up rolling it at some point when the worst happens. Right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's a roll bar design.
Just like Matt's car, they build it to crash.
Matt, you should build some of this structure into the next car that you're working with,
Put
sir.
his seat at that exact angle, so maybe it crashed.
47-degree seat for Matt. Safety first. You guys, thank you very much. If we don't have any other good questions, Steve, I think that we can probably...
We got a pretty good one from Robbie Frazier.
What do you got, Robbie?
When will shock therapy via an MD helicopter compared to the Robinson?
I've got to get back to work in order for that to happen.
We might all have to stop doing these feeds to make that happen. So be careful what you ask for or wish for on that one.
All right, you guys.
But I think we're good. You guys, thank you very much. Come on in here. Thank you guys very much for taking the time to stop by, bringing this amazing helicopter over here for all of us to look at and enjoy, and then answering some of the questions that we have, that Steve has, that aren't very intelligent but are very fun. And kind of let everybody know what goes into a lot of this stuff behind the scenes. It's not just as easy as you guys might make it look. There's a lot behind it, a lot to learn from, and that's what we try to do in our industry.
Great.
So thank you. Hopefully it was fun.
yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you very much. We
Cheers.
I
appreciate
had
all your
one last
hospitality.
question. One last question. How many helicopters of yours come with heat-seeking missiles?
Chase,
It's an option.
Expensive option.
we're not talking about your dog. Okay. No red rockets on these. All right.
Steve, you know what to do.
Steve, sign us out.
Take us out, guys. If you guys are looking to buy anything off our website, please visit www.shocktherapist.com or call into the shop at 623-217-4959.
If you guys want a helicopter, MD Helicopters, check them out.